Welcome to Tom's YouTube studio, where I'm going to share all you need to know about Tom Studio pens. First of all, let me clarify. I'm not Tom. Well, I'm Tom, but Tom from Goldspot Pens, not the Tom from Tom Studio. That's a different Tom, one that lives in England and who has a much more pleasant sounding accent than me. So join me, Tom, as we explore Tom Studio. Goldspot always has its eye out for new and exciting writing brands, stewards of stationery and champions of analog. When the UK's Tom Studio came across our radar, we felt it would be a good fit for our collection of world-class fine writing brands. Tom Studio caught our attention for several reasons. First of all, we felt like the pens have a broader appeal for creatives, artists, and writers, not just fountain pen users. They have a very approachable price point starting at $37 to a little over $100. Then you have their minimalist designs, which are very, very chic, stylish, and devoid of a lot of the extra bells and whistles you might find on fine, super fine pens. Then you have the commitment to creating eco-conscious products. You could see that from Tom Studio packaging, as well as their ethos behind the Lumos and Wren models, which is creating a refillable writing pen you could refill over and over again with fountain pen ink. So first we'll take a look at all of the different models that are currently available at Goldspot. We'll just quickly kind of give you a summary of what each model is all about. First with the Lumos, which is a cylindrical anodized aluminum bodied refillable felt tip pen. So instead of using felt tip cartridges like you might see with let's say a Mont Blanc or various other types of felt tip type pens, like I think Diplomat makes them, a few other manufacturers make them, not made very often. Cross is another one I could think of with the select tip porous point. But instead of using a replaceable cartridge, you could refill the Lumos over and over again with fountain pen ink using this cotton core reservoir. Then we have the Wren, which is an entry-level, pocket-friendly version of the Lumos, built for more general purpose writing and or drawing. And last of the three modes, we have the Pocket V2 fountain pen, which is Tom Studio's take on a portable fountain pen. So next we're going to talk about how to use the Lumos, because it's not very intuitive, it's unusual, especially in the fountain pen realm. If you've been using fountain pens for a while, it's very unusual to be then using fountain pen ink in a felt tip pen. So we want to kind of go over, well, just how to interchange the felt tips, how to refill the pen, and how to clean all of it whenever you need to maintenance the pen. So when you buy either the Lumos Single, the Lumos Duo, or the Lumos Mini, if you get the Pro version, which are all versions we have at Goldspot, you would also get a pack of 11 Lumos felt tip refills. Basically they're refills, but they're replaceable tip units that have different point sizes and with different point styles that you could then replace in your Lumos pen. And these are compatible with only the Lumos products. The Wren uses a separate tip that you could purchase separately. When you first receive a Lumos pen, you would notice it doesn't come with the tip installed. So you have to pick which tip you want to go with first. So you would go from the various 11 different tip styles. I have a 0.3 fine liner. So you would select your tip and then take, let's say, the Lumos Single. You would unscrew the tip and the holder from the rest of the body, including the cotton core reservoir. You leave the reservoir attached, but you would unscrew the very tip of the pen to reveal a small holder where then you take the tip and then insert the plastic end into the holder. Just press it all gently in there. And then you would notice at the opposite end where it connects to the cotton core reservoir is a little spike, and that little felt spike presses into the cotton core reservoir, and that's where you would get your ink flow from the reservoir to the tip of the nib. You would screw back on the top portion until it screws on nice and secure. And then we get to the filling part, which is one of the most satisfying aspects, I think, of owning a Lumos or a Wren pen, is filling the cotton core reservoir. I'll show you why. So each Lumos pen would either come with a small little 3 milliliter jar of ink, or you could purchase one of these larger 50 milliliter bottles of Tom Studio ink, or use any fountain pen ink that you may have. Well, except for shimmers. Shimmers, I wouldn't trust with this system because the particles in the shimmer probably will cause clogs and whatnot. Although I could be wrong. I mean, you could tell me that you use a shimmer ink and it works perfectly fine, but I just think that, especially with fountain pens, kind of not being able to handle it so well sometimes, that a system like this probably will cause some clogging issues. So I would stick with just standard fountain pen inks when filling a Lumos or a Wren fountain pen. So when we fill the cotton core reservoir, it's pretty cool because it kind of does a thing similar to like the Custom 823 where ink just kind of rises up against gravity. And that's because we're going to take the cotton core reservoir and just stick it into the ink, and then the ink crawls up the cotton in a very, very satisfying way. It's kind of like when you spill a whole lot of ink on paper and you would just see it kind of feather outward. That's exactly what's happening here. It's just kind of spreading through the fibers of the cotton all the way up to the end, just like waiting for it to fully saturate. And you could do this with the tip attached too if you'd like. You could just attach it right here. And then that way, the ink will also get into the tip of the pen as well. And you may just want to have a little paper towel nearby just to wipe the excess ink off of where you made contact inside the bottle of ink. And then we insert the rest of the pen back into the barrel, and then we should be good to write. And then because the Tom Studio pens usually have an O-ring that sits at the base of the threads where they connect to each other, it usually does keep it pretty solidly, like it keeps the ink pretty well wet when it's not in use, but you definitely do need to make sure you cap it every time. Because these do, especially if you leave them capped like this for a while, I think there's still some play with the ink being able to lose its water content through evaporation, which I'll get to into the troubleshooting section at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. So because you have multiple different tips, 11 in total, and you have the ability to buy separate reservoirs, each Lumos comes with at least one reservoir to start with, you could then swap. So you could do some swapping, especially if you have a project where you're doing multiple colors, you want to do different tip styles, let's say you're moving from broader areas to more detailed areas. Then what you could do is you could actually store the filled up ink reservoir as well as the tip, and then just swap in between which ones you're using. So just using the single Lumos again as an example, I'm going to unscrew the assembly out of the barrel. I would then take out the tip. I just have to be a little bit careful because then I might get ink on my fingers, but that's okay because we're used to fountain pens where you get ink on your fingers all the time. So you unscrew the top, remove the tip. I could put that on the paper here. Remove the cotton core reservoir. Then we could put back in the tip that I had sitting on reserve, as well as the reservoir. Just make sure that's nice and fit. Screw the top back on, and then put the assembly back into the barrel. And there you are writing with a new tip and a new color. And for storage though, you definitely want to make sure the storage, wherever you put like a freshly inked reservoir and the tip, is going to be not exactly vacuum sealed, but at least like it's not entirely porous to the air, because of course, like if air gets at this, it's going to evaporate the water content of the ink, and it's probably going to give you some fits and hard starts to get working back again. So with the Lumos, you have 3 different options. You have the Lumos Pro Single, which measures 152 millimeters, 10 millimeter diameter, and about 20 grams in heft. It's aluminum, it's anodized aluminum, so it has generally a pretty decent feel in hand, doesn't feel too lightweight. It does include the package of 11 tips plus the 3 milliliters of black ink. And it has the 1 long reservoir. And you could find these available in a variety of different colors for $63. Then for artists and writers who want a little bit more versatility in their creativity, you have the Lumos Pro Duo, which is basically 2 pens in 1. They can be used at the same time, yet there's only just 1 cap. And it does look very similar to the single, but it's just a millimeter bigger than the single is. So you would have the 1 forward end that I unscrewed the cap off of. Then you unscrew the barrel, and then you have another tip that then you could then screw together opposite-ended to each other and be able to then write with or draw with on both sides. But you only have 1 cap, so whenever you need to close the second end, then you could screw in that end to the back end of the primary end, and then for the primary end, screw the cap back on. So it does measure out pretty much the same except for just being a millimeter longer. And it does include the same 11 different tip styles plus the 3 milliliter pot of black ink. And it has 2 smaller reservoirs, so it's not compatible with the longer reservoir of the single. You'd have to get the particular reservoir that works for the Duo. So the reservoir for the Duo is quite significantly smaller. So in order to get the compatible ones, you gotta make sure you get the Duo. And you can find the Duo available for $101 in a variety of different colors. Then you have the Lumos Mini, which is half the size of the Lumos Pro Single or the Duo. It's 83 millimeters in length, 10 millimeters in diameter, and 10 grams. The Lumos Mini uses the same tip set as the Duo and the Single, and it also uses the Duo's cotton core reservoir. So filling the Lumos Mini might be a little bit tricky, and there's a little plastic getcha tool here to help you. So if you unscrew the tip portion to insert the writing tip and you realize, oh, well, I gotta fill this pen, so I gotta have to remove this somehow, and it's kind of like a very small area. So you would use this little doohickey here as a gripper, and then you would unscrew the reservoir free from the rest of the barrel. And like I mentioned, this is the Duo size. You can't use a single size with this, it would be way too big. And since the Mini is only $48, you might be asking yourself, Tom, the math doesn't add up. If I get the Duo for $101, why couldn't I just buy, let's say, 2 of the Minis and just make my own Duo? But what ends up happening is because of the way that this forward part is machined, this will screw on this way, but you're not going to be able to, let's say, take 2 of them and put them together because this won't happen. So you can't screw the back end of the one side to you can't screw the front end of this to the back end of that and then make your own Duo. This is a special part that's different, obviously, from the Mini size. So then we have the Wren. So the Wren works the same as the Lumos does with the cotton core reservoirs. It uses its own cotton core reservoir, which is different in dimensions than the Lumos. And it also has its own tip style as well, which is unique to this model. So there's only 1 Japanese writing tip that's available for the Wren. And you can get replacements for it, but there is no variety of different tip styles like you would with the Lumos. So this is kind of like a really nice beginner's intro into Tom's Studio, especially the refillable felt tip type of pen, because it is inexpensive and it's a nice pocket-friendly type of pen. It is 79 millimeters closed, 120 millimeters open with the cap posted, and it's 14 millimeters with the cap diameter, as well as 10 millimeters at this barrel section right here where the front part unscrews from the rest of the body. It's 20 grams, so it's about the same as a Lumos Single or Duo. And the faceted cap, because of the O-rings that are on here, it either closes very securely or it posts very securely too. So when you do close it, the faceted cap prevents things from rolling away. which is really important for a pocket-sized pen. I mean, it was something that could have been nice to engineer into the Lumos, but for purposes of portability and being able to keep this as like a quick desk pen or on your travels, it's nice that they did put that functionality in there since it doesn't have a roll, stop, or clip. So you can find the entry-level Wren for $37 in a variety of anodized, colorful styles. Then you have the classic fountain pen, which this is the Pocket V2 fountain pen, being V2 being that it's a more updated version from their previous version, which we didn't carry because we're new ourselves to the Tom Studio brand. It does, as the Wren, have a faceted cap and barrel design very similar to each other. However, it is a bit longer, so it's 94 millimeters closed. It's 152 millimeters open with the cap posted. The cap diameter is the same, about 14 millimeters. And you have a little bit slightly thicker grip area at 11 millimeters where it separates from the barrel. The weight is 25 grams, which is a little bit heavier than the Wren is. And the nib on this is a Bach No. 6 stainless steel nib unit, which can be unscrewed from the grip section and replaced with Tom Studio nibs, or like I mentioned, any Bach No. 6 nib unit would also work as well. Now, because this pen is pocket sized, unfortunately, there's not a lot of room for ink in this pen. So the Tom Studio Pocket V2 comes with an international style short ink cartridge. And as we know, since there's not that much room in here, there's not really any room for a standard converter. So what are your converter options? You could, let's say, refill, which is Tom Studio's recommendation. You could refill this cartridge using a syringe. Or you could use Kaweco's foldable converter, the foldable sport converter, not the other piston sport converter you usually use with the pull. It's the one that has the arm that folds in, the one they use for the Lilliput. That would work with this, and I think that would be my option for it. I would definitely not recommend eyedropper converting with metal pens, as the ink can sometimes fuse the metal parts together. The Tom Studio Pocket V2 and also other Tom Studio fountain pens available in a different range of nib sizes. You have fine, medium. There's also a flexible, I think this is extra fine, or other styles are available, Architect, Cursive Italic, which we currently have sold separately as individual nib units, and then you could, of course, swap them as you please. The Tom Studio Pocket V2 is available at $90, and it's comparable, I think, to the Kaweco AL Sport fountain pen. So now that we have toured Tom Studio's different pen models that are currently available at Goldspot, I want to help some people out troubleshooting Tom Studio pens. You know, being that I've been using a Tom Studio Lumos and Wren for a few months, I'd like to offer some of my experience in case you guys run into any issues. So unlike traditional fountain pens, the Lumos and Wren have felt tip fine liners on them. So they don't have metal tips that can be used for decades without needing to be replaced. So if your writing and drawing starts to get a little bit fuzzy around the edges and a little streaky, then I would suggest buying a pack of replacement tips. So you could find the different grade of fine liner tips or the different like chisel tips and things like that. You could find them in 3 packs for a particular tip size. So you don't have to buy the whole full set. You can if you want to, but you could buy one of each of them if you prefer a particular tip size that comes in this package. I would recommend maybe getting a few off the bat because it's just easier to be able to get your writing nice, clean, and precise. And also too is that you could do what I had done with swapping out the point and swapping out the reservoir if you're working on different projects that you need different types of point sizes and inks for, and that way you could hot swap them on the fly. So sometimes as you're writing with the Lumos, or after you've maybe left it in a drawer or maybe in like a bag, guilty, for a few weeks, you know, it may start to run a little bit dry. Despite the O-rings being there to really make a secure closure on this pen, I still feel that ink has a chance to evaporate over time. I think that's with basically any pen, except for maybe like the Platinum 3776, which sometimes those, like, you could seal them in for like years, basically, without drying out. But it could possibly dry up a little bit over time, and you may have a dry writer if you don't consistently use it. In this case, I would try the following. Scribble to get the flow going. You know, so sometimes just like a little quick scribble gets the ink going from a light color to then its rich original color that it was at. Then if that doesn't really give you the results you're looking for, I would then open up the pen and give the reservoir just a gentle squeeze and see if you could reactivate the ink inside. Kind of like priming the feed of a fountain pen if you start to run out of ink. Then I would recommend either dipping the tip in some water or adding a couple of drops of water to the reservoir to then reactivate the ink inside. And cleaning the Lumos is pretty easy, or the Wren, is that you would detach the cotton core reservoir and basically just run this under tap water. Just keep running it until it runs clean. So you could get it to as clean as probably just having a little tint of whatever color was in there, and it'd be perfectly fine because whatever other ink that you're gonna end up saturating this core with is going to overwhelm that original ink color that was in there. Or you may wanna, like, let's say, designate cotton core reservoirs for particular colors. So you can have like ones that just have blues in them, ones that have reds, that sort of thing. And the same thing with the tip goes as well, although you just want to really make sure that with the rinsing out the tips that you don't accidentally drop them in the drain because they're very small. So you could also like soak the tips if you'd like to, just to remove the ink from there. But it's super easy to clean. There's a certain level of like interchangeability that you have with it, especially since you can get the replacement cotton core reservoirs that you could have a few on hand. That way you don't have to wait for the original cotton core reservoir to dry after you've rinsed it out. You let it air dry for a few days, let it sit on a paper towel, and then just use another replacement one as you're waiting for that one to be dried. As someone who is named Tom, I'm happy to see that a pen brand of which carries my name makes a quality pen that I'm proud to share with you today. I hope that you've enjoyed exploring Tom's studio and that you might consider adding a pen, maybe a Wren or a pocket fountain pen, to your mix of creative tools and writing instruments. There are more products in store for Tom's studio, so I encourage you to use the link in the description to visit Goldspot Pen's current selection of Tom's products. Tell him that Goldspot Tom sent you, and not to fire him. Until next time, stay inky, my friends. Take care.